The soft glow of the setting sun filtered through the large windows of the St. Augustine Public Library, casting long shadows across the polished wooden floors and illuminating dust motes that danced in the air. Amelia Carter, her chestnut hair pulled back in a loose bun, sat at her desk in the reference section, her green eyes fixed on the computer screen before her. At 28, she exuded an air of quiet confidence, tempered by a hint of restlessness that suggested a hunger for something more than her current life offered. As the last of the day's patrons trickled out, Amelia began her usual closing routine. She moved through the stacks, straightening books and enjoying the familiar scent of old paper and leather bindings. This was her sanctuary, a place where knowledge and imagination intertwined, where she could lose herself in the worlds contained within the thousands of volumes surrounding her. Just as she was about to lock up, the library's heavy oak doors swung open, admitting a tall, distinguished-looking man. Amelia's heart skipped a beat as she recognized Henry Blackwood, the newly appointed head of the library board. At 52, Henry cut an imposing figure, salt and pepper hair, piercing blue eyes, and an air of authority that commanded attention. "Mr. Blackwood," Amelia said, surprised. "I didn't expect anyone else this evening. Can I help you with something?" Henry's eyes crinkled at the corners as he smiled, a warm expression that seemed to soften his otherwise stern demeanor. "Miss Carter, isn't it? I hope I'm not intruding. I was in the neighborhood and thought I'd stop by to see how things are running after hours." Amelia felt a flutter in her stomach at the sound of his deep, rich voice. She'd seen Henry at board meetings before, but they'd never spoken one-on-one. "Of course, it's no intrusion at all. Would you like a tour?" As they walked through the quiet library, Amelia found herself captivated by Henry's knowledge and passion for literature. He spoke eloquently about rare first editions and the importance of preserving historical documents. In turn, Henry seemed genuinely interested in Amelia's ideas for community outreach programs and modernizing the library's systems. Time seemed to slip away as they talked, and before Amelia knew it, they were sitting in her small office, cups of hastily brewed tea growing cold on the desk between them. The conversation had turned personal, with Henry asking about her background and aspirations. "I've always loved books," Amelia admitted, a hint of wistfulness in her voice. "But lately I've been feeling, I don't know, like there's something more out there for me." "Does that sound crazy?" Henry leaned forward, his blue eyes intense. "Not at all. In fact, I think I might have a proposition for you." He went on to explain that the library board was looking to create a new position, a community engagement coordinator who would work on expanding the library's reach and implementing new programs. "I think you'd be perfect for it, Amelia," he said, her name rolling off his tongue in a way that sent a shiver down her spine. Amelia's mind raced with the possibilities. This could be the opportunity she'd been waiting for, a chance to make a real difference. But as she looked at Henry, noting the way his shirt clung to his broad shoulders and the subtle cologne that teased her senses, she realized that her excitement wasn't solely about the job. I'd be honored," she said, her voice slightly breathless. "Thank you for considering me, Mr. Blackwood." "Henry, please," he insisted, reaching out to touch her hand lightly. The contact sent a jolt of electricity through Amelia's body. "I have a feeling we'll be working closely together from now on." As Henry left the library that night, Amelia leaned against her desk, her heart pounding. She knew she should be focusing on the amazing career opportunity she'd just been offered, but all she could think about was the way Henry's eyes had lingered on her, the warmth of his hand, and the promise of future encounters. Little did she know that this evening would mark the beginning of a passionate, complex relationship that would challenge everything she thought she knew about love, loyalty, and her own moral compass. Over the next few months, Amelia threw herself into her new role with enthusiasm. She organized reading programs for underprivileged children, set up a digital literacy workshop for seniors, and worked on securing grants to expand the library's collection. Through it all, Henry was a constant presence, offering guidance, support, and increasingly something more. Their meetings, initially focused on work, began to take on a different tone. Lingering glances turned into accidental touches. Late-night planning sessions became opportunities for deep, personal conversations. Amelia found herself looking forward to every interaction with Henry, her pulse quickening whenever he was near. It was during one such late-night meeting, as they pored over budget reports in Henry's home office, that everything changed. The Blackwood residence was a stately Victorian, filled with antique furniture and walls lined with bookshelves. Amelia had been there several times before, always maintaining a professional distance despite the growing tension between them. But tonight was different. Maybe it was the way the lamplight softened Henry's features, or the third glass of wine they'd shared over dinner. As Henry leaned in to point out a figure on the spreadsheet, Amelia caught the scent of his cologne, a heady mix of sandalwood and something uniquely him. Their eyes met, and in that moment all pretense fell away. Henry's hand cupped her cheek, his thumb tracing her lower lip. "Amelia," he murmured, his voice husky with desire. "Tell me you want this as much as I do." Amelia knew she should pull away. Henry was not only her boss but also a married man. This was wrong on so many levels. But the longing that had been building for months overwhelmed her sense of propriety. "Yes," she whispered, closing the distance between them. Their first kiss was electric, passionate, and tinged with the thrill of the forbidden. Amelia melted into Henry's embrace, all thoughts of consequences forgotten in the heat of the moment. As clothes were shed and they made their way to Henry's bedroom, a small voice in the back of Amelia's mind whispered that this was a point of no return. But wrapped in Henry's strong arms, feeling more alive than she had in years, she couldn't bring herself to care. The affair that followed was intense and all-consuming. Stolen moments in Henry's office, clandestine meetings in out-of-the-way hotels, passionate encounters in the stacks after the library had closed. Amelia had never felt so desired, so appreciated, so alive. Henry awoke something in her that she hadn't even known was sleeping. But with the highs came the inevitable lows. The guilt that gnawed at Amelia's conscience in the quiet hours of the night. The pain of watching Henry go home to his wife, knowing she was the other woman. The constant fear of discovery that added both excitement and stress to their relationship. Despite these challenges, Amelia found herself falling deeply in love with Henry. It wasn't just the physical attraction, though that was undeniably strong. It was the way he challenged her intellectually, encouraged her professionally, and seemed to see her in a way no one else ever had. As months passed, however, the strain of their secret began to take its toll. Amelia became increasingly uncomfortable with the lies and deception their relationship required. She started to question whether what they had was worth the potential cost to their careers and reputations. These doubts came to a head one rainy afternoon in October. Amelia was in her office, working on a grant proposal, when she received an unexpected visitor. A woman in her early 50s, elegantly dressed with a face that showed signs of both beauty and strain, knocked on her open door. "Excuse me, are you Amelia Carter?" the woman asked, her voice cool and controlled. Amelia nodded, a sense of unease settling in her stomach. "Yes, can I help you?" The woman stepped into the office, closing the door behind her. "I'm Margaret Blackwood, Henry's wife." The world seemed to tilt on its axis as Amelia stared at the woman before her. She had known, of course, that Henry was married, but faced with the reality of his wife, the full weight of what she'd been doing came crashing down on her. "Mrs. Blackwood, Amelia began, but Margaret cut her off with a raised hand. "Save it," she said, her voice trembling slightly with suppressed emotion. "I know what's been going on between you and my husband. Did you think you could keep it a secret forever? In a town this size?" Amelia felt the blood drain from her face. "I'm so sorry," she whispered, shame and guilt washing over her in waves. "I never meant to hurt anyone." Margaret's laugh was bitter and hollow. "Hurt? Oh, my dear, you've done far more than hurt me. You've destroyed my family, tarnished my husband's reputation, and for what? A few moments of passion with a man old enough to be your father." Each word was like a dagger to Amelia's heart. She had never allowed herself to fully consider the consequences of her actions, the ripple effect of pain and betrayal that spread far beyond just her and Henry. "I love him," Amelia said softly, surprising herself with the admission. Margaret's eyes flashed with anger. "Love? You don't know the first thing about love, girl. Love is standing by someone for 30 years through good times and bad. Love is sacrificing your own dreams to support your partner's career. Love is not sneaking around like teenagers, betraying vows and trust." Tears streamed down Amelia's face as the full impact of her actions hit her. What are you going to do?" she asked, dreading the answer. Margaret straightened, smoothing her already immaculate outfit. I'm not going to do anything. You are. You're going to end this affair, Miss Carter. You're going to resign from your position and leave town. Because if you don't, I will make sure everyone knows exactly what kind of person you really are. And believe me, in a community like this, that's a reputation you'll never shake." With those parting words, Margaret left, leaving Amelia alone with her turmoil of emotions. She sat at her desk, staring blankly at the computer screen, her mind racing. How had things spiraled so out of control? How could she have let herself become this person? A liar, a cheater, a homewrecker. That evening, Amelia called Henry and asked him to meet her at their usual spot, a small, secluded park on the outskirts of town. As she waited on a bench watching the sun dip below the horizon, she steeled herself for what she knew she had to do. Henry arrived, a smile on his face that quickly faded when he saw Amelia's expression. "What's wrong?" he asked, sitting beside her and reaching for her hand. Amelia pulled away, her heart breaking at the hurt that flashed across Henry's face. "Your wife came to see me today," she said quietly. Henry's sharp intake of breath was the only sound in the quiet park. "Amelia, I'm so sorry. I never meant for you to be put in that position." "What did she say? What did she do?" Amelia shook her head, fighting back tears. "It doesn't matter. What matters is that it has to end, Henry. We can't keep doing this." "No," Henry said forcefully, grabbing her hands. "Amelia, please. I love you. I'll leave Margaret. I'll quit the board. We can be together properly." For a moment, Amelia allowed herself to imagine it. A life with Henry, out in the open, no more secrets or lies. But then reality came crashing back. "And what about your children, Henry? Your grandchildren? Are you ready to give up Sunday dinners and holidays with them? What about your reputation in the community? The scandal this would cause?" Henry's grip on her hands tightened. "None of that matters if I don't have you." Amelia gently extracted her hands from his, her heart breaking all over again at the desperate look in his eyes. "It does matter, Henry, and deep down you know that. We've been living in a fantasy, pretending that our actions don't have consequences. But they do, and it's time we faced them. So that's it." Henry's voice was rough with emotion. "You're just going to walk away?" Amelia stood, wrapping her arms around herself as if to hold herself together. "I have to, for both our sakes. I'm leaving town, Henry. I've already drafted my resignation letter. Please don't try to contact me. This is hard enough as it is." As she turned to walk away, Henry called out to her. "Amelia, wait. I love you. Doesn't that count for anything?" She paused, looking back at him one last time. In the fading light, she could see the pain etched on his face, mirroring the ache in her own heart. "It counts for everything," she said softly. "That's why I have to go." With those final words, Amelia walked away, each step feeling like it was tearing her apart. She had never known it was possible to feel so much pain, and yet be so certain she was doing the right thing. The weeks that followed were a blur of packing, tearful goodbyes to confused colleagues, and sleepless nights spent second-guessing her decision. Henry had respected her wishes and hadn't tried to contact her, though she'd heard through the grapevine that he'd taken a leave of absence from the library board. As Amelia loaded the last of her boxes into her car, preparing to drive to her new job in a city 3 states away, she allowed herself one final moment of reflection. She thought about the passion she'd shared with Henry, the way he'd made her feel alive and appreciated. But she also thought about Margaret's words, about the pain and destruction their affair had caused. In that moment, standing in the driveway of the apartment she called home for the past 5 years, Amelia realized that love, real, lasting love, wasn't just about passion and excitement. It was about respect, honesty, and sometimes making the difficult choice to walk away. As she pulled out of the driveway, Amelia felt a weight lift from her shoulders. The road ahead was uncertain, but for the first time in months, she felt like she could breathe again. She had lost something precious, yes, but in the process she had found herself. The sun was rising as Amelia crossed the state line, painting the sky in hues of pink and gold. It was a new day, a new beginning. And as she drove towards her future, Amelia allowed herself to hope that someday, she would find a love that was both passionate and honorable. A love she could be proud of in the light of day. Years later, Amelia would look back on her time with Henry as a bittersweet chapter in her life. It had been a period of intense emotions, of highest highs and lowest lows. The pain of their separation had taken a long time to fade, but with distance came clarity. She had learned valuable lessons about herself, about the complexities of love, and the importance of integrity. The experience had shaped her, making her more compassionate, more understanding of the shades of gray that often colored people's choices. In her new city, Amelia had thrown herself into her work, rising through the ranks to become the director of a large public library system. She had made new friends, dated occasionally, but always with a newfound caution and self-awareness. It was on a crisp autumn day, much like the one when she'd first met Henry, that Amelia received an unexpected package. Inside was a first edition of her favorite novel, along with a note in familiar handwriting. "Amelia, I hope this finds you well. I followed your career from afar and am proud of all you've accomplished. You were right to leave when you did. It was the wake-up call I needed to reevaluate my life and make amends with my family. I want you to know that I don't regret our time together. You taught me what it meant to truly feel alive again. But more importantly, you taught me the value of doing the right thing, even when it's painful. I hope you've found happiness. You deserve it more than anyone I know. Always, Henry." Amelia traced her fingers over the words, a bittersweet smile playing on her lips. She felt no urge to respond, no desire to reopen old wounds. Instead, she placed the book on her shelf, a reminder of a tumultuous time that had ultimately led her to where she was meant to be. As she looked out her office window at the bustling city below, Amelia felt a sense of peace wash over her. She had loved, lost, and grown. And in the end, she had chosen her own path, guided by the moral compass she had nearly lost during her affair with Henry. The book on her shelf would serve as a reminder of both the passion she had experienced and the wisdom she had gained. As the years passed, Amelia's life took on a rhythm she found both comforting and fulfilling. Her work at the library continued to challenge and inspire her, and she found herself mentoring younger librarians, passing on not just her professional knowledge, but also the life lessons she had learned the hard way. One particularly busy afternoon, as Amelia was overseeing the setup for a new digital media center in the library, a young woman approached her desk. The woman couldn't have been more than 25, with bright eyes full of enthusiasm and a stack of resumes clutched to her chest. "Miss Carter?" the young woman asked hesitantly. "I'm Sophie Miller. I have an interview for the assistant librarian position." Amelia smiled warmly, instantly transported back to her own early days in the profession. "Of course, Sophie. Please have a seat." As they talked, Amelia found herself impressed by Sophie's passion and innovative ideas. But there was something else, a familiar glint in the young woman's eye when she spoke about the library's board president, a charismatic man in his late 40s. "Mr. Donovan has been so supportive of my application," Sophie gushed. "He's been giving me advice on how to advance my career. He's amazing, isn't he?" Amelia felt a chill run down her spine, memories of Henry flooding back. She saw in Sophie a reflection of her younger self, eager, impressionable, and potentially on the brink of making the same mistakes. After the interview, Amelia sat back in her chair, conflicted. Sophie was by far the most qualified candidate for the position. But could Amelia in good conscience bring her into an environment where history might repeat itself? For days, Amelia grappled with the decision. She observed Mr. Donovan during board meetings, noting the way his eyes followed Sophie when she gave her presentation to the board. She saw the lingering touches, the private smiles, all achingly familiar. Finally, Amelia made her decision. She called Sophie into her office, the weight of responsibility heavy on her shoulders. "Sophie," Amelia began, choosing her words carefully, "I'm pleased to offer you the position of assistant librarian." The young woman's face lit up with joy, but Amelia held up a hand to continue. "Before you accept, there's something I need to share with you. A story about choices, consequences, and the fine line between mentorship and something more complicated." Over the next hour, Amelia opened up about her past with Henry. She spoke of the intoxicating allure of an older, successful man's attention, the thrill of a secret affair, and the devastating aftermath when reality came crashing down. Sophie listened, her expression shifting from confusion to shock to understanding. When Amelia finished, the young woman was quiet for a long moment. "Thank you for telling me this, Miss Carter. Sophie finally said, her voice soft. I think I needed to hear it. Amelia reached across the desk, gently squeezing Sophie's hand. I'm not telling you what to do, Sophie. You're an adult, capable of making your own decisions. I just want you to go into this job with your eyes wide open. Sophie nodded, a new maturity settling over her features. I understand. And I still want the job if you'll have me. As Sophie left the office, Amelia felt a mix of emotions, relief, nostalgia, and a sense of having come full circle. By sharing her story, she hoped to spare Sophie the pain she had endured. But more than that, she had finally forgiven her younger self for the choices she had made. That evening, as Amelia walked through the quiet library after hours, she found herself in the rare books section. Her fingers trailed along the spines of ancient tomes, stopping at the first edition Henry had sent her years ago. She pulled the book from the shelf, opening it to find the note still tucked inside. As she read Henry's words again, Amelia was surprised to find that the pain that had once accompanied these memories had faded, replaced by a gentle acceptance. Amelia thought about Henry, about the life they might have had together if circumstances had been different. But she also thought about the strong, independent woman she had become because of, or perhaps in spite of, their relationship. As she replaced the book on the shelf, Amelia made a decision. It was time to write her own story, to share the lessons she had learned with a wider audience. She would write a novel, a tale of love, loss, and redemption set against the backdrop of a small-town library. Over the next year, Amelia poured her heart into her writing. She wove together threads of her own experiences with fictional elements, creating a narrative that was both deeply personal and universally relatable. When the book was finally published, it received critical acclaim for its honest portrayal of complex relationships and moral dilemmas. Amelia found herself thrust into the spotlight, invited to speak at literary festivals and book clubs across the country. It was at one such event, a literature conference in New York, that Amelia's past and present collided in an unexpected way. As she was signing copies of her book after her talk, she looked up to find a familiar face in the queue. Henry stood before her, older now, his hair more silver than pepper, but his blue eyes still as piercing as she remembered. For a moment, Amelia felt as if all the air had been sucked from the room. "Hello, Amelia," Henry said softly, a small smile playing at the corners of his mouth. "Congratulations on the book. It's beautiful." Amelia took a deep breath, steadying herself. "Thank you, Henry. It means a lot to hear you say that." They looked at each other for a long moment, years of unspoken words passing between them. Finally, Henry placed a copy of her book on the table. "Would you sign it for me?" he asked. "For old time's sake?" Amelia nodded, opening the book to its title page. She paused for a moment, pen hovering over the paper before writing. "To Henry, who taught me that every ending can also be a beginning. Thank you for the lessons, both bitter and sweet." Amelia. As she handed the book back to Henry, their fingers brushed, and Amelia felt a ghost of the old electricity between them. But it was just that, a ghost, a memory of a passion long past. "Are you happy, Henry?" Amelia asked, surprising herself with the question. Henry's smile was genuine, reaching his eyes in a way Amelia hadn't seen in years. "I am," he said. "It took some time and a lot of soul-searching, but Margaret and I found our way back to each other. And you? Are you happy, Amelia?" Amelia thought about her life, her fulfilling career, her newfound success as an author, the wisdom and peace she had found within herself. "Yes," she said, realizing as she spoke that it was entirely true. "Yes, I really am." As Henry walked away, Amelia felt a sense of closure wash over her. Their story had come to an end years ago, but its echoes had shaped both of their lives in profound ways. The rest of the conference passed in a blur of panels, networking, and book signings. On her last night in New York, Amelia found herself standing on the balcony of her hotel room, looking out over the glittering city skyline. She thought about the long journey that had brought her to this moment, the passionate affair with Henry, the painful separation, the years of self-discovery, and finally, the act of turning her experiences into art. Amelia realized that every choice, every heartbreak, every moment of joy had led her to become the woman she was today. She had loved deeply, lost profoundly, and ultimately found herself. As she gazed at the city lights, Amelia felt a sense of anticipation for what the future might hold. She had written one chapter of her life, but there were still many blank pages ahead, waiting to be filled. With a smile, Amelia turned away from the view and back to her laptop, where the beginnings of her next novel awaited. She had more stories to tell, more wisdom to share, and a whole life still to live.